can improvise. You can, Ukrainians get stuff done. It's amazing. So looking ahead, I see Ukraine as a market we need to take into account when developing our organization. The city works, the people work, and if you have a business interest, you go now. Well, I love my work. We'll stop.
Good afternoon or good morning to everyone. Today we have a very nice guest in our program, Let's Talk. Today we are going to talk to Philipp von Michaelis, the CEO and owner of Global Business Solutions. And Philipp, I would like, first of all, thank you very much for your membership in Global Business for Ukraine. This is our extraterritorial business arm of European Business Association. And I hope that you enjoy it. But nevertheless, the topic for today would be actually to understand what are your merits to come to Ukraine. What do you feel when you are in Ukraine? And what kind of recommendation would you be able to give to the government of Ukraine as well as to the business community in order to stay sustainable in the current turmoil and current conflict and situation? So let me start from asking you, have you heard of Ukraine before the war started?
Thank you, Anna, first of all, and thank you for giving me that opportunity. Allow me to say I do enjoy being part of the EBA, and I'm not saying that to promote you, but it is true that through our dialogue, we've had a really valuable interaction so far and great support to our activities. Have I heard of Ukraine before? Yes, of course. Have I had a lot of interaction? Not that much, due to the business we're involved in. We're supporting countries and regions following an armed conflict. I have been involved in Ukraine. I've been to Ukraine prior to 2022 because of the conflict in the Donbas region. So I had a little bit of knowledge of the country, of the people, and of the situation, but that has completely changed last year in February.
And your business is demining, and obviously for you, most likely it is the most evident solution to come to Ukraine, because obviously Ukraine is the most polluted country probably in the world, right? So what is your stake? What is your viewpoint? How much time Ukraine would need actually to clear all the lands?
Yeah, that's a big question. We can fill the hour with that question, but let me give an answer to that. Well, first of all, we're involved with demining. What does that mean? It's a very complicated activity. Being involved in that topic means we provide technology equipment, but we also provide the know-how. So we look at a country and first make an estimate, what does the country need? Do we just need to provide a little bit of advice and a little bit of hardware and equipment? That's fairly easy. In the case of Ukraine, it is indeed, as you say, a completely different situation. The country is still at war. So that has a huge impact on how to do business and how to set your priorities, because the priorities are set by the government or set by the situation. So on top of that, we see an incredible amount of destruction due to the ongoing conflict. We not only see structured minefields, we see a lot of unexploded ordnance mixed with landmines. We see IEDs, which we've previously only seen in countries like Iraq or Libya. So the complexity of what we have to deal with being an expert is immense. Now that needs to be explained to the government, to the local population. We need to make them aware of the consequences, the risks involved. And all this then leads to an analysis of what needs to be done. And that's the process we are currently in with, mostly the government, with a lot of international support, obviously. And coming to the estimate, how long that will take, that's always difficult. Now, in the big media, where you only read the headlines, you read the figures, it's 174,000 square kilometers. That figure is true, it's not wrong. But linking this to an estimate that it will take, a figure I've recently read, 700 years to clean up the country. Now that doesn't help really. Yeah? We will not live to see that. Yeah. So my answer to this is, if the right activities are being initiated now, meaning building up capacities, bringing know-how and technology into the country, good interaction, good planning ahead, that will help Ukraine in the next few years to build up those capacities. And then following that phase, with a lot of international support, Ukraine will be able to take part of the problem by themselves. always with a little bit of support and interaction. But it will not take hundreds of years to clear the most relevant parts of Ukraine. But what I like to say, there will be a farmer or someone going hunting in 80 years or 100 years, and he will step on a landmine. That's a sad fact. And I'm not saying that to create a big drama. We see that in other countries. I'm from Germany. We are still dealing with the aftermath of the Second World War. There's a big industry doing demining, not demining, doing clearance or detection for explosive, for airdrop bombs. Even now, 70, 80 years after the war. So that's a sad fact, but if the right activities are initiated now and in the coming years, then Ukraine can develop, Ukraine can be rebuilt and reconstructed while reducing the risks of these dangers, of these threats.
It's interesting. So basically, taking into consideration that the cleaning in Ukraine should take minimum like hundreds of years or decades for sure, it means that for your business, it's really a huge potential to develop and to expand in Ukraine, right? So in this respect, I would like to ask, what was your feelings? What are your first steps in Ukraine? Because you're not for the long time yet, like you're approaching either the first year or a little bit more, but nevertheless, you're pretty fresh in Ukraine. What are your sentiments at the current stage?
Yeah, well, generally, I mean, our business normally starts when there's a conflict comes to an end, when there's some kind of peace treaty, when there's a UN mission being implemented. That's normally when the work starts, and then we look at, okay, who's responsible for the work, and these are the people we approach. Now, Ukraine is different. We have a country that is still at war. We have a country that at the same time has areas that need to be reconstructed. So we need to approach that differently. We need to look at it, who's doing what. So we're talking to the government, different entities. We're talking to the police. We're talking to the emergency service. We're talking to the army, but we're also talking to the civilian sector, the agriculture, the construction business. So they all need some kind of support, be it equipment or be it know-how, advice, and such things. So first we started last year, obviously, me, myself, I've been to Ukraine, I think 6-7 times now. I got a lot of people going in and out of the country, just creating a network and talking to people. We then came to the point that we said, okay, we need an infrastructure here. It's not enough just going in and out and sending some equipment. So we established an entity, actually 2 entities in Ukraine, a representation and also an LLC. We opened an office. We are currently furnishing a service center so that we can support our clients in country, because that's what it needs. You cannot support such an activity sitting in nice little Switzerland, as beautiful as that may sound. We need to be where things are happening. We need to interact with our clients, which is actually a challenge because it's a new activity for most of the people we talk to. So we need to explain to them what needs to be done. It's not like you're buying a lawnmower and send it to the field. No, it requires a lot more know-how. It requires adherence to Ukrainian law, which is currently constantly changing. There are standards, international standards and national standards that need to be adhered to. So it is a very complex activity, and it only works when you are in country and very, very closely interacting with the authorities.
But in this respect, somebody should pay the bill, right? So somebody should pay for demining. And at this stage, do you feel it's enough potential or financial means or financial resources to cover the cost of demining? And are you happy with the source of income?
Well, yeah, I mean, is there enough money? There's never enough money, especially in a time when the country still needs to fight the war. I need to repeat that again. And at the same time, you need to build up the infrastructure again. At the same time, you need to keep the economy going. So, of course, there's a lack of everything right now. I think it's very much about setting priorities and close coordination. We are throwing everything into our activities in Ukraine, what we have. About 80% of my time is allocated to what's happening in Ukraine, and the same goes for my team. we have to be a little bit careful. Where's this going? So the discussions now are very much, okay, we do what we can now, but what do we do next year? You know, we need to plan, we need to start planning a little bit in advance. Now, easier said than done. Where's the war going? What happens in a year? If anyone would know that, they would get a Nobel Prize, I guess. But that's a little bit the challenge. So there are people approaching us, telling us you need to do more, you need to be faster. And at the same time, you know, there's no point in rushing things when they don't work properly in the end. Yeah? So we need to make sure that people are prepared for the work that needs to be done. And in the case of our equipment, we need to make sure that once they get the equipment, we need to start thinking ahead. So you'll need spare parts, you need more support. So we need to plan that now, because we have a supply chain we need to take into account. So it comes down to close coordination, to which define the better that coordination is, the better the outcome and the impact will be.
It looks like it's the beauty of Swiss or German approach, and it seems to me Ukrainians should also learn that, right?
Well, we can learn from you too, pragmatism, for example. But I don't want to tell the name, but an Ukrainian official recently told me, Philip, stop with all the standards. Yeah, I said, well, yeah, don't be so German, don't be so Swiss. So, well, okay, sorry. But it needs, you can improvise. Ukrainians get stuff done. It's amazing. You tell them they just do it. But sometimes it helps to think a little bit about it and establish certain guidelines, because again, we're not looking at one job here. We're looking at a variety of activities and projects to be done. So my very diplomatic answer is a mix of both, of the qualities of both cultures and countries would be the recipe for success.
Excellent. So in this respect, I was also hearing from you that you would like to structure your business from one side to sell equipment and demine, and from the second point, you would like to sell services, right? To maintain this kind of stuff, like maintain demining works, I would say, in such a way, and basically teach also Ukrainians how to demine on their own. And let me ask you the question with regards to production. Do you consider also to produce in Ukraine at some point, or at this stage, it's enough to have facilities in Germany?
Yeah, I mean, that question is coming up obviously on a regular basis. The question is a little bit what kind of production. I mean, if I think a long time ahead, assuming Ukraine will join the EU, assuming that we'll have a market for a long time, should we consider a local production? Yeah, potentially, absolutely. I'm already getting requests from my people, like, could we order steel in Ukraine? Could we produce this in Ukraine and that? Yes, absolutely. So looking ahead, I see Ukraine as a market we need to take into account when developing our organization and our value chain. Right now, establishing a production facility would probably be a step too far, but we're getting there. As I told you, we start with a legal entity. We start with a service center. We already today we can bring equipment back from the field, repair it in or close to Kiev, and send it back. So we're already reducing the time and the money it will take. We're building up capacities in Ukraine. So if you ask me 2-3 years from now, would be in a position to further increase and start producing parts, producing components or attachments? Yes, absolutely. Being asked, can we set up a local production today? I don't think that makes sense, because no one can answer to me. So how big is the market now? How many machines will need to be produced? If you only think about that product, the worldwide demand for machines before Ukraine was 50 units. Now, are we going to ship thousands of units to Ukraine? Unlikely. So if there's only demand for 250 machines, building up a local production might just not make sense from a business point of view. But just repeat, creating a local value and local work share is something we're already doing. Where this is going, the future will tell.
And you said that basically those ones who would know when the war is going to end will get the Nobel Prize. I will ask you this question based on your experience on other markets, in other countries which are in conflict, and looking at the situation in Ukraine at the current stage of development. What's your guess? How much time this war might take? So it should be months or years, or what should happen? Because obviously you have substantial experience in this area.
Well, experience shows that normally it takes much longer until a country is in a position that it's sort of the conflict has been overcome and it can really focus on reconstruction. I think I don't think I need to be a visionary to say that probably the conflict is going to continue a little bit longer, and it's not clear if there will be a full-blown victory for either side. So there will be potentially some kind of stalemate, some kind of situation where no active conflict is going on, so that actually the country can focus on really rebuilding a major part of where the fighting has been going on. So that is my assumption, that hopefully by next year we see that situation where you can also safely travel to the regions. Right now we are traveling. I've been to Kharkiv. My people have just been to Mykolaiv and Kherson. So we are traveling around the country, but obviously it's fairly restricted. So if as soon as we can build up capacities now and infrastructure, but as soon as I would say the situation is a bit more stable than it is today, you will see an increase in productivity.
And also, next question, having international experience and talking to different governments all around the world, how would you also estimate preparedness or readiness of Ukrainian government as well? Do you see enough responsiveness from Ukrainian officials to the request? How would you compare that with other countries? I do not want to judge, actually. I do not want you to judge them. But nevertheless, I would like to understand where we are in terms of attitude to investors, attitude to potential investors.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's always easy to criticize. And I usually don't accept criticism from people that don't have an intimate knowledge of the situation in countries. So if you go there, and if you see how the situation is being dealt with, and it usually starts with the head. The way Ukrainian president oversees what's happening, I have a lot of admiration for that. Does everything work? No, of course not. It's chaos in many areas, and we feel it ourselves. I mean, certain things that seem simple take a long time, and something that someone tells us it works like this today, tomorrow it works differently. So that drives you crazy. So all your planning goes out of the window. So that's something you need to prepare for. Will that improve? I guess so. I mean, if I attend those international conferences, it's all about coordination, and that is important. So you need coordination in country, but you also need coordination on the international level, and then you need the interfaces. Yeah. So if you blame Ukraine for not being coordinated, well, you can also blame the international community, because every country has a different strategy, has a different vision, a different motivation, maybe. So let's align those two sides first, and then let's make sure they talk to each other in a good way. Then this will have an impact on how we can do business and how we can support Ukraine.
And would you recommend your counterparts, your partners, your friends to come to Ukraine with investments or with some business? Because quite often we see that actually Swiss people and Germans are a little bit reserved, although Germany and Switzerland supports obviously Ukraine, and Germany even more, I guess. But nevertheless, still, there is some sort of distance between us and Germans and Swiss. But nevertheless, I would like to ask you, since you are native and there, right? Would you recommend actually coming into Ukraine at this stage, and to whom you would recommend to do so?
Yeah, it's a fairly clear yes, depending on what you're trying to achieve. If you look at business opportunities in Ukraine now, and assuming we're all positive regarding Ukrainians' chances to be successful in that conflict, you should go now. I agree. I'm sometimes surprised by the reservation I'm also feeling among the German and Swiss business environment, business community. On the other hand, it's a little bit unfair. I'm used to these kind of situations. I've been to Iraq. I've been to Libya, and many other countries that have or have recently come out of a conflict. So I think we're a little bit more resilient when it comes to that. So for me, traveling, or even my colleagues traveling to Ukraine, is not an issue at all. And in fact, when I compare that to Baghdad, again, you're living in paradise, literally, if you adhere to certain rules. So yes, if you have a business interest in Ukraine now, you should go now. Absolutely. Again, the worst is to get there. Yeah, I wish they would open a flight to Kiev. I've done all the routes. I've taken every route into Ukraine. It's all the same.
What's the best one? What's the best one?
Well, the best one is if you get a cabin for yourself on one of the trains, yeah, and you can sleep for 8-9 hours. That's the best one. I've had that once, yeah? So on one trip. Everything else, it just takes time. Once you're there, there's certain restrictions. You have to listen to the app that tells you there's an air raid. You need to be aware where's the next shelter, and make sure you know what to do if something happens. But life goes on. It's amazing. I mean, you have traffic jams in the morning. It was different when I was there the first time, beginning of May. I was the only tourist in town. Yeah, and that was nice too, but for different reasons. But the city works, the people work, and if you have a business interest, you go now. No.
But it's interesting whether you go to shelters, because quite often Ukrainians who live there for all the time, and they get used to this war. Quite often I hear that they don't go to shelters, which is all not always good, right? But what do you do on your own when you're in Ukraine? Do you visit shelters?
My wife is listening, so I better be careful what I'm answering. No, seriously, again, first of all, you need to be aware, because what you do when you're staying in an apartment or an hotel, you need to wonder where's my next shelter. Now, if you go out, you have business meetings, again, you need to make a step of where do I go if something happens? You're in the taxi and there's an air raid. You get it on your phone. What do you do? So you need to decide that. I mean, the company should advise you what to do, and then it's a very personal decision. There are ways to see why is there an air raid, what is happening. If there's a plane starting in Belarus, maybe I don't have to go. I decide for myself I don't want to go to a shelter. The worst is if the air raid starts at 2 a.m. You're deep asleep, wonderful dreams, and you're supposed to go down to the shelter. That's the worst. And I admit, maybe I have not always gone to the shelter, but I do in certain cases. Yes. Mm.
And where do you get this energy? What's the recipe of your really very active approach? Because you look very fresh at the current stage, and knowing how active you are and that you live in the plane most of the time, right? And you somehow move around all the time. Where do you get this energy?
Well, I love my work. Full stop. That's the most important thing. I love what we do. I love that we can have an impact on the people we work with and we work for. And I think that is the most important driver for my energy. It's the people around me that give me that energy. And in this case of Ukraine, and again, I'm not telling you that to flatter you. I love working with Ukrainians. The commitment, the dedication I witness with them gives me the energy to further support them.
Thank you so much, Philipp, and thank you really for support of Ukraine. Thank you for support of the business community, and thank you for being with us, because it's important for us to have this bridge between Swiss and German community. Yeah. And we would like to develop really the nice words about Ukraine, the fair picture about Ukraine, and we believe that such people as you might help us to do that. Thank you so much for this, and let's keep in touch.
Absolutely, it's been a pleasure.